Buonasera a tutti. Good evening and welcome to the Italian Radio Hour. Io sono Viviana and I would like to welcome back our regular listeners and also welcome any new listeners. Also, be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at Italian Radio Hour and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch up on any past video interviews. Vorrei dare il benvenuto ai nostri ascoltatori da tutto il mondo, grazie per essere con noi anche oggi mentre continuiamo il nostro viaggio per l'Italia e la cultura italiana. Today on the Italian Radio Hour, we welcome Carmen Amato, an award-winning author whose gripping Galliano Club series brings the gritty world of Italian-American life during Prohibition roaring back to life. Carmen grew up in Rome, New York, surrounded by stories, especially those told by her grandfather, a deputy sheriff whose tales could rival any crime novel. But Carmen's own journey is just as captivating, from small-town Italian-American roots to a career as a CIA intelligence officer, and now as a celebrated author. We will talk about how her Italian heritage shaped her storytelling, how real-life experiences fed her fiction, and what she hopes readers discover about the Italian-American immigrant experience through her work. So don't go anywhere, sit back and relax, ma prima pubblicità. Parli italiano? Do you want to learn, improve, or master your Italian? Istituto Mondo Italiano can help. Located in the heart of Regent Square, Mondo Italiano offers small group classes and one-on-one private tutoring, in person or online, to help you learn Italian in no time. Visit us online at istitutomondoitaliano.org. Well, welcome back, Carmen. It's an honor to have you. How are you today?
Good morning, Viviana. I am thrilled to be here and to virtually meet your audience. My Italian-American roots are very important to me. I think it really shaped my values, my outlook as an adult. So I think we all have a lot in common.
Absolutely, and especially from Rome. I'm from Rome, Italy, you Rome, New York. So tell me about what Rome, New York looks like or looked like when you were growing up.
Well, first of all, I'm very jealous about you being from Rome, Italy, which is, of course, one of my favorite places ever. I think I have been 4 times to the big Rome, and always found it such a wonderful walkable city, surprisingly. And of course, a great place to overspend on handbags. I will admit, first off, and this has nothing to do with Rome, New York or my upbringing, but I'm somewhat of an Italian handbag addict. So having gotten that confession out of the way, I will say that Rome, New York was a very small, close-knit community when I was growing up in the 1960s. Everyone was Italian, Irish, or Polish. And if you were Italian, you went to St. John's Church. If you were Irish, you went to St. Paul's. If you were Polish, you went to Transfiguration. So it was a close-knit community because you had that Catholic common tie. Mm-hmm. And seasons of life were pretty much dictated by that Catholic experience. Every Sunday, it was you dress up and you go to church with the family, and my mother always wore a hat and gloves. And afterwards, we had coffee and donuts at my grandparents' house. They lived right next door to us. And of course, my cousins were about a mile away. So every Sunday, was an event with a big E. And I always recall coming home from school during the week, and often there would be guests, someone who's dropping in on my grandparents. My grandmother didn't drive, but her house was always ready for a party. There was always the instant makings for antipasto, coffee, anisette, limoncello, those little bitty glasses that you would have your anisette in with coffee. So I have to admit, I think I grew up always expecting that there might be an impromptu party when I got home.
So the Sunday Mass that you kind of described, obviously people took pride of dressing up, which is something that I highly respect and unfortunately might have got a little bit on these issues. Sometimes I have cannot don't want to generalize, but the Sundays after Mass were storytelling time with your grandfather, right? Can you describe the scene and what did again those conversations felt like, look like?
Well, if you can imagine a small kitchen, they did not have a separate dining room. There were only 5 chairs in the kitchen table, but my grandmother had a dining room set in the living room. So those chairs would come in, but we'd all be crammed in the kitchen, jammed around that table. She always made coffee in an electric percolator, and there was always enough. You always had coffee, and my grandfather liked cosa dolce in the morning, so there was always donuts
Sweet
or
treat.
yeah, something sweet pie even. Um, so there were 4 of us kids, my mother, my grandparents, my aunt, and uncle had 4. So, there'd be a lot of people around noon crammed into the kitchen. And if we could, we would get my grandfather talking about his years as a deputy sheriff of Oneida County. So that's upstate New York. It's about midway between New York City and the Canadian border, so right in the center. And several different waterways connect in Oneida County. You've got the Erie Canal, the Hudson, or the Mohawk River, and Wood Creek. And those waterways formed the path that the Iroquois Nation could take all the way from New York City to the Great Lakes. And there was only a small part in upstate New York, in Oneida County, where they had to carry the canoes, and they called it the Diowainsta, the carrying place. So, what had been a historical transport route was great for bootleggers in the 1920s. So my grandfather, as a deputy sheriff in those years, ended up having a number of interesting experiences. Um, Probably the most humorous was the night he was assigned to stake out a cemetery because bootleggers had staged an elaborate fake funeral, it was thought, and buried a coffin full of booze. And he was assigned by the sheriff to go stake out the cemetery. And when the bootleggers came back to dig up their illegal booze, he was to arrest them. Well, my grandfather did not want to go there at night by himself, so he enlisted his best friend, Hank Rizzuto, whose son John would become head of Givenchy America.
Oh, well.
And but John was not a law enforcement officer, or Hank, the father, was not a law enforcement officer. Hank sold life insurance. So my grandfather, Joseph Sestito, takes his friend and they go hide out in the cemetery. It's cold, it's dark, it's a scary night, there's no lights. And oh, they waited. They waited 10, 15 minutes and then they left. If the bootleggers came for their liquor, they were welcome to it. So those are the kind of stories that we would get him to tell. Um, just over coffee. And my brother was very good. My older brother was very good at drawing out my grandfather. And he asked him once, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do?
Hmm.
And my grandfather said, oh, I'd join the mob because they were the ones with all the money. Now, later, I remember him telling me never to date the boys from Utica, the
Oh,
next town over,
mhm.
because all of their fathers were mobsters.
Oh, wow.
I never did. But he was very well plugged in, even though he um, left law enforcement as a deputy sheriff when Prohibition ended and the Depression hit. He ended up having a very long career at the Revere Copper and Brass Rolling Mill, and he was also the city marshal of Rome, New York, which meant that he collected public debt and served summons and garnishee paperwork on people.
Mhm.
So he had a very interesting career, and I do think his stories influenced all of us grandchildren to a certain extent.
Well, greatly, because also in addition to the stories he told, I'm sure there is also imagination, especially when you're little kids, kind of picture in your head what these people look like, and just so what happened to you from little girl hearing the stories to the CIA as an intelligence officer? What was your path to get again from a small town Italian American life to CIA officer?
Well, as much as I think I had a very nice uh, childhood in Rome, it did feel very small as I got older. And I knew I wanted to do something else outside of Rome. I didn't really see a path forward career-wise for me there. My mother was very insistent that all four of her children attend a four-year college. And I did. I went on to graduate school at the University of Virginia. And that is where I met a CIA recruiter and uh, got hired. So I actually had to wait 6 months for my security clearance, during which time I spent in Rome, kind of reacquainting myself after 6 years at college and grad school. But got a job with the CIA, which took me literally around the world for 30 years.
Mhm.
Um, and definitely I think I took Rome with me
Mhm.
in a certain way because did spend a lot of time in Mexico and Central America. And I found that the same, Catholic rhythms of life, the same seasons, the same cluster of family in the kitchen marked life there. And I felt very comfortable in those places because of that.
Actually, you almost stole what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if indeed your this social Italian American upbringing, the family and people around, perhaps shaped also the your approach to human relationships, or reading between the lines while you were carrying out your job. And it looks like you found indeed an environment also that matched a little bit what you were accustomed to and cherished. So, talking about still cultural background, loyalty, family, storytelling, do you think indeed that might have given you an edge in your intelligence career?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because family was such a big part of my upbringing. When you're working at a place like CIA, which is so multicultural, there are people from everywhere. You're walking the halls of the building and you're hearing different languages. You can always find some common thread if you are able to talk about food, family, values, traditions. And I think that really did help me a great deal in connecting with people. And later, when I became a supervisor and you're trying to inspire people, or you're trying to let all of those people who are coming into a mission, but they have such different points of view, such different backgrounds, they don't always mesh until you can find that common thread.
Mhm.
And yes, I do think that I was able to do that, drawing on my background and trying to get folks to share their own family, their own values, their own what makes their cultural traditions important to them to maintain, and
Mhm.
then sharing those. I did work in one CIA office that had a holiday party every year. And there were several different conference rooms in the building where we were. So each conference room got assigned kind of a different region of the world. And so the European region, we had Italian food, we had German bratwurst, we had lasagna. In the Asian conference room was, full of great Chinese and Thai food. Um, and so there would be 5 or 6 different rooms devoted to these different cultural feasts. And it was a wonderful, movable party. You'd go from room to room and sample everyone's heritage. And that was a wonderful way of bringing together a very disparate group by leaning on all of these different heritages and introducing these heritages to different people who were all working together.
Mhm. So all in all, how long were you with the agency?
30 years.
30 years. So was your writing already going on or was it afterwards that you finally had the time to devote to your writing?
Well, I can't say I had the time while I was working full time and writing, but that would be what I did on Saturday mornings and did that for years. I was first inspired to start writing after living in Mexico for several years.
Mhm.
Even though I I enjoyed living there, I was really struck by the disparity in social status. It seems like there's the ultra wealthy in that country and then the lowest um, poverty level. There's not much of a middle class in Mexico. And I felt like I had something to say about that, what I had observed. And that turned out to be my first book, The Hidden Light of Mexico City, a political thriller. But I published that, let's see, 4 years before I retired.
Mhm.
So that was a bit of a juggling, time juggling to do that. But that was what I did on Saturdays as I wrote fiction.
Wonderful. So, can you tell us a little more about the Galliano Club books? Because they're based in part of your grandfather's life. And what was the moment where you knew I have to turn this into a book?
The Galliano Club thrillers, there's 4, 3 full novels and a prequel of short stories. Really, I had no intention of writing anything like this. I had written not only the debut political thriller, The Hidden Light of Mexico City, but I had started what was becoming a very successful police procedural series, the Detective Amelia Cruz series, set in Acapulco. She was the first female police detective in Acapulco. Well, Mexico, Acapulco, police, you're talking crime, you're talking drug cartels, official corruption, and Mexican machismo. So, this was a fairly gritty series, but when COVID hit, I really fell out of love for a little bit of writing such hard issues.
Mhm.
Not only that, but I was here in Tennessee. My mother was still in Rome and having a very difficult time with the lockdown situation. And it was particularly severe, I think, in New York. So she and I would talk on the phone every night. And to cheer her up, we'd talk about Rome and we'd talk about her growing up in the 1930s. We'd talk about her parents. We'd talk about the Italian community. It was very comforting to both of us to be talking about, oh, the Strand Theater and what they used to show, and the Mohegan Market, and shopping there with her father, and Red's Meat Market, and things on Dominic Street. Anyways, lots of things about Rome, just that were very comforting in this time of uncertainty. Well, as we talked, the more that she told me about things, I recalled that in 2019, I had been asked when I was inducted into the Rome Arts Hall of Fame if I would ever write a mystery series like the Detective Amelia Cruz series, but put it in Rome. And I really could not picture a modern crime fiction series set in Rome. That's for someone else to write. But after talking with my mother every night, I really could picture this 1920s sense of Rome. And at some point before then, I had gone to the Rome Historical Society, and they had given me copies of all these pictures that they had that nobody had done anything with. So I had tons of photocopied content. Um, well, between that little seed that was planted in 2019 at the Hall of Fame and these conversations with my mother, and of course the stories from my grandfather that had been with me all my life, those elements came together, and I thought, oh, I'll write one book. And then it was, I've got a better, this will be three really short novels. And then it turned into three big novels, um, one of which won the Silver Falchion Award for the Best Historical of 2023, and the prequel, which actually was inspired by a photograph I found in an antique store. So
Wow.
that's how those books came to be.
Mhm. So I was wondering, because you mentioned the Historical Society, you mentioned, photographs and so forth. So how much of the setting, the storyline is rooted in fact versus fiction?
That's a blurry kind of answer. There is a real Galliano Club in Rome, New York. It is on Dominic Street. It has two front doors. One leads into the club, the other one leads upstairs into a dance studio. And when I was in high school, I took tap dance lessons from John Hayes O'Neill on the second floor of the Galliano Club. So that became the focal point of a series about Rome, New York, the Galliano Club. And the real club has been expanded in fiction to be much larger just in floor space than it is. And not only is there a dance studio on the second floor, there's also an apartment where Ruth Cross, the dancer, who's
Mhm.
one of the main characters, lives. So with that setting, that start, Dominic Street in Rome, the major thoroughfare running through the Italian section of town, became Hamilton Street, and East Rome, the Italian historical neighborhood in Rome, became East Lido in the fictional town of Lido, New York. So the setting is very true, very authentic. Once you go, I guess it's a little bit north of Dominic Street in Rome, New York, you have the old East Rome neighborhood. The streets are very narrow. Most of the houses are double deckers with one family living upstairs and one family living downstairs. And the Revere Copper and Brass Rolling Mill is on the other side of Dominic Street. That's sort of the big industrial area. So all these Italian workers who worked at Revere just, when the whistle blew, they left the house and walked down to the factory. There was no car needed. So that was the setting. That is the setting of the Galliano Club books, in which the Galliano Club is the hangout for the Italian mill workers, as did happen.
So I'm going to leave you with one question, then we're going to go into a quick commercial break. What was the most surprising historical fact that you might have uncovered while writing these books? So I'll give you a little minute that we're going to commercials. Applying for Italian citizenship? Need documents translation? Istituto Mondo Italiano provides certified translations and assistance services. Be sure to visit us at istitutomondoitaliano.org and schedule your free consultation. Un caffè, per favore. My first cup of coffee sets the tone for my entire day, and I get my coffee at La Prima Espresso. La Prima has been brewing Pittsburgh's best coffee for over 35 years. Try any of their in-house roasted varieties of beans from all over the world at home, or come and enjoy an espresso or a cappuccino at any of their locations, with their friendly baristas and familiar faces who will make you feel at home. Visit laprima.com to get La Prima Espresso coffee at your door. Okay, so we are back having a great conversation with Carmen Amato. We're talking about Rome, New York, the Galliano Club, her research and setting for this series. And the question that I had asked her before going into a break, what was the most surprising historical fact that Carmen uncovered while writing her books?
I will actually give you two very interesting facts that I discovered. The first was that 1/10 of all copper used in American manufacturing came from Rome, New York during the late 20s.
Oh, wow.
And they had a great big electrified sign over one of the main bridges leading into the city with that fact. And I found a picture of that. The second interesting historical fact was that my grandfather rose to the position of deputy foreman of the Revere Copper and Brass Rolling Mill, and the foreman was a man named Art Ted. And I always remember my grandparents talking about Art Ted, and I never knew if that was one name or two, and never really asked them about that. Well, he was the foreman, and then he became the mayor of Rome. So one of my grandfather's best friends was mayor of Rome.
Wow. So something else I would like to ask you about. So your books spotlight the grit, the ambition, the hardship of immigrants. Why is it important to you to tell these stories now?
I think it's maybe not now that it's so important, but always. Because especially in the United States, we are a nation of immigrants, and immigrants change the flavor of where we are, the things we're able to learn, the new ideas that come with immigrants. my goodness, you walk through the grocery store here in Middle Tennessee. There's a lot of Italian food for sale that
Mhm.
without Italian immigrants, nobody would be making, you know, what is now considered mainstream food. Um, my dog is here. Excuse us if you hear him. Um, so I think it's always important to keep in mind not cultural appropriation, but appreciation, and appreciate what new ideas, what new interesting things, whether it's food or performances or literature that cultures share and
Mhm.
that we can share and we should share more of.
Mhm. So let's envision, on the other hand, now the reversing the roles. You're the one telling the story, telling the book, sharing the books with your grandfather. So, what do you think he would say? How would he feel knowing that or realizing the impact that those stories made on you, both as a young girl and now as an established author? So, reverse the roles.
I think he was not much of a book reader. My grandfather would read the Rome Daily Sentinel, but he was much more of a man of action
Mhm.
and a respecter of hard work. So I think he would respect the work that went into researching the books,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure he'd be all that excited to read them, in all honesty. My grandmother was much more of a reader. You could never beat her in Scrabble. She had an
Mhm.
amazing vocabulary. Um, and my mother, of course, was a huge fan. Unfortunately, uh, she was not able to read the books. She passed last year.
Sorry. Mhm. Um, so I'm just sharing quickly your website, carmenamato.net, because I wanted to bring up the Galliano Club series, and obviously for our viewers and listeners to look at under the whole books section. But I was wondering if you have ever been contacted by any of your readers, or maybe during book presentations, them sharing that the books remind them of their grandparents and their family history.
I do get a lot of emails um, from people, mostly who have some connection to Rome,
Mhm.
and they recognize the city in the books. And the woman who is I guess she's the chairman of the Arts Hall of Fame in Rome, Maria Rich, sent me a note one day and said, every time I go by, I'm on Dominic Street, I think of you, which was really
Mhm.
sweet. Um, I I like that they are connecting the books to Rome. I'm a little surprised not more um, Italian American readers um, have made that connection to their past, to their family's past. But I think word is getting out a little bit more.
Mhm. Are there any more Galliano Club books to come or a new direction that you're currently exploring in your writing?
Um, you know, I the storyline which focuses on the battle or the rivalry between bartender Luca Lombardo, the recently arrived immigrant from Serra San Bruno in Calabria, and Benny Rotolo, Chicago bootlegger who's kicked out of Chicago by Al Capone. to control the Galliano Club is the main theme that plays out over the three novels. For Luca, the Galliano Club is the only home he's ever really known, and he wants it to stay as is despite various internal issues. Benny, the bootlegger, he's in upstate New York only because he got kicked out of Chicago, and he wants to create his own bootlegging empire and sees the Galliano Club as the perfect signature speakeasy. So whether he can buy it, steal it, bulldoze his way through, bribe somebody, he wants that building. It's kind of the perfect location and perfect setup. And now upstairs, I mentioned before, there's a dance studio, and Ruth Cross, who has a scandalous past that she would like to remain hidden, she witnesses a murder, but she doesn't see the perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
And that kicks off the first book, Murder at the Galliano Club.
Mm-hmm.
The prequel, Road to the Galliano Club, gives the reader the backstory of each of those three characters. How Luca had to leave Calabria, how his wife and child died, leaving him alone in the United States, Ruth's big scandal, and how she ended up at the Galliano Club, and Benny's checkered bootlegging past, and how he aligned himself with the wrong bunch in Chicago. So they all end up at the Galliano Club. The first book is Murder. The second book is Blackmail, where Benny's trying to blackmail enough people to be able to seize the Galliano Club. And then at the end, the third book is Revenge at the Galliano Club, in which the sister of a woman that Benny has killed comes to Lido to get justice, and she's not particularly fussy about how that is achieved. Mm-hmm. And she becomes the catalyst for wrapping all the threads together. Mm-hmm. So over this saga of a prequel and three novels, the story is complete. Yet at the same time, readers have asked me, well, yes, like you have asked me, will there be more Galliano Club? Because they're so in love with the setting, with Lido, with that era, with the Italian family connections that are shown in the book. And golly, I don't know. So I'm going to have to just say, I would love to write more in that universe, in that place, and bring people, back into the Galliano Club universe. But I don't have another plot. Mm-hmm. So, I'm open. If somebody wants to email me, Carmen@carmenamato.net, and you've got some ideas, I'm open.
Okay, so you have a Substack, you have also an Instagram page where you post videos, reels, and so forth. So I'm going to actually take a couple from your Instagram account. What is the hardest thing about being a mystery author?
What is actually, I'm always full of ideas, except when it comes to, a sequel for the Galliano Club. The hardest part about being a mystery author is getting everything in the right sequence, getting all of those important elements, the clues, the personal details about your characters, getting them in the right sequence to build that sense of suspense and not have the reader guess the outcome too quickly.
Mm-hmm. So I think, I don't know if it was within that video, possibly you have all these post-its that that you have indeed to make sure that everything matches. So it's a huge undertaking.
It is, and I have to admit the second novel, Blackmail at the Galliano Club, or
Mm-hmm.
that one gave me the hardest time. I burned through a lot of post-it notes trying to get each detail in the right place so that no one would guess the various things. I wanted readers to be surprised throughout.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one last question before we go into the closing, maybe two. What's that one thing now about the Italian American experience that you feel is still either misunderstood or underrepresented?
Hmm. You know, I maybe because I'm a reader and I'm an author, I don't think there are enough attention paid to Italian authors.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are a lot of books coming out that are translated, um, but there could be more. And definitely, I think readers have lost their taste for classic literature, or, philosophy for the Romans,
Mm-hmm.
um, and talking ancient Rome. Um, and that's not being taught in schools. So I would like to see more of that.
Yeah. And any words or recommendations for listeners or viewers that would like to start reading your work? Do you have any recommendation on where to begin?
Well, definitely Road to the Galliano Club. And I'm very excited. I can announce on your radio hour that audiobooks are coming. I just today recorded the foreword to the prequel, Road to the Galliano Club. All of the books are being recorded by James Fromell,
Mhm.
and he has a lovely voice, but also is very good with accents. So my own contribution is just recording the forward, but those will be out in the next few months. I'm very
Mhm.
excited to have those books because I know that um, my demographic enjoys audiobooks as well as uh, print or ebooks.
Mhm.
So I'm happy to be able to announce the audiobooks are coming.
I'm excited. I'm very, very excited. It's like catching two birds with one stone, right? Being able to enjoy the stories and your work, and so in any format, anywhere, and so absolutely. So, um, well, any other last minute comment, piece of advice to people approaching writing, maybe that you would like to share?
Well, if you want to write something that comes from the heart, um, to have a purpose and something you want to say, and it makes it a lot easier to write something that means something to you rather than just, oh, I'm going to write a book because I think I'm going to make $1 million out of it.
Mhm. Okay.
Write something that means to you.
Wonderful. Well, unfortunately, our time together is up. Il Big Ben ha detto stop, and it's time for us to say arrivederci e alla prossima. We want to thank you for tuning in into the program. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have any topics you would like us to address, please contact us at italianradiohour@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And remember, if you or any of your family and friends have missed a prior episode or would like to listen to this episode again, Subscribe to the Italian Radio Hour on YouTube or where you catch your favorite podcast. And don't forget to share because sharing is caring. So I would like to thank my guest one more time, Carmen Amato. We will be putting all the links to your website and your work on the show notes. So thank you again from Rome to Rome, from a Roman to a Roman.
Yes.
And we want to thank our sponsors, Istituto Mondo Italiano and La Prima Espresso. Until next time, alla prossima. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.